My parents forgot my 28th birthday, then bought my sister a new house the same week. So I cut them off and moved away. Months later, they reported me missing only to discover I was living a better life without them. I have one sister, Jessica, who's 25. Growing up, it was always crystal clear that Jessica was the golden child and I was, well, let's just say I was the practice kid. You know those parents who mess up with their first child and then get it right with the second? That was my family, except they never stopped treating me like the rough draft. Jessica got ballet lessons, piano lessons, art classes, and summer camps. I got told we couldn't afford extras. Jessica got a brand new car for her 16th birthday. I got a lecture about responsibility and a bus pass. Jessica's college was fully paid for, including her sorority dues and study abroad semester. I worked 3 jobs and took out loans that I'm still paying off, but I dealt with it. I told myself that parents evolve, that maybe they just learned better financial management by the time Jessica came around. I graduated college, got a decent job in marketing, and tried to maintain a relationship with my family despite feeling like an outsider at every holiday gathering. The breaking point came on my 28th birthday, March 15th. I'm not someone who needs a big celebration, but a simple happy birthday text from your parents seems like the bare minimum, right? The day came and went. Nothing. No call, no text, no email, radio silence. I waited until the next day thinking maybe they'd realize their mistake and reach out with apologies. Still nothing. By day 3, I was hurt, but not entirely surprised. This was par for the course with my family. Then exactly 1 week later, I saw Jessica's Instagram post. There she was holding keys in front of a gorgeous 2-story colonial house with a red door and white picket fence. The caption read, "Surprise. Mom and Dad bought me my dream home as an early housewarming gift. I can't believe I'm a homeowner at 25, #blessed, and ever #dream come true." I stared at that post for a solid 10 minutes. A house. They bought her a house. Not helped with a down payment. Bought her an entire house. And they couldn't even remember to text me happy birthday. I did what any rational person would do. I called my mom. "Sarah. Honey, how are you?" She answered, sounding genuinely happy to hear from me. "I'm fine, Mom. I saw Jessica's post about the house. That's quite a gift." "Oh yes. Isn't it wonderful? Your father and I found this perfect little starter home, and we just couldn't resist. Jessica's been working so hard at her new job, and we wanted to help her get established. Jessica's been at her marketing coordinator job for exactly 4 months. Mom. Well, yes, but she's doing so well, and the market is so competitive for young people trying to buy homes these days." I took a deep breath. "Mom, did you realize you missed my birthday last week?" There was a pause. A long pause. "Oh, sweetheart. Was that last week? I'm so sorry. Time just gets away from me sometimes. We'll make it up to you. You bought Jessica a house but forgot my birthday. Now, Sarah, don't be dramatic. These are completely different things." "You're right. They are different. One costs about $300,000, and the other would have cost you nothing but 30 seconds to send a text." I said, "I'm sorry. What more do you want from me?" That question hung in the air. What did I want from her? I wanted to matter. I wanted to feel like I existed in their world as more than an afterthought. I wanted them to love me even half as much as they loved Jessica. But I couldn't say that. Instead, I said, "Nothing, Mom. Don't worry about it. We love you, Sarah. You know that, right? Sure. I have to go." That night, I made a decision. I was done. I was done being the forgotten daughter, the consolation prize, the rough draft. I was done pretending that their crumbs of attention were enough. I was done being grateful for the bare minimum while Jessica got the world handed to her on a silver platter. I was going to disappear from their lives and see how long it took them to notice. But I wasn't going to do it halfway. If I was going to disappear, I was going to do it right. First, I blocked all of them on social media. Mom, Dad, Jessica, and even a few aunts and uncles who I knew would report back to my parents about anything they saw. I didn't post a dramatic goodbye or explanation. I just quietly removed myself from their digital world. Next, I changed my phone number. I'd been meaning to switch carriers anyway for a better deal, so this was the perfect time. I didn't give the new number to anyone in my family. Then came the bigger moves. I'd been considering a job change for months, and a company in Portland had been trying to recruit me. I'd been hesitant because it would mean moving across the country from Ohio, but now it seemed perfect. I accepted their offer. I gave my landlord notice, sold most of my furniture, and packed up my life. The only people I told about my move were my 3 closest friends, Emma, who I'd known since college, Marcus from work, and my neighbor Beth, who had become like a big sister to me. Within 6 weeks of Jessica's house post, I was living in Portland, Oregon, 3 time zones away from my family. I had a new job, a new apartment, a new phone number, and a new life. I felt free for the first time in years. Portland was everything I needed. My new job was challenging and rewarding. My coworkers actually seemed to value my input, and the city itself felt like a fresh start. I joined a hiking group, took up pottery classes, and started dating a guy named Jake who worked at a local brewery. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that was entirely mine. 4 months passed. I occasionally wondered if my parents had noticed I wasn't responding to their calls or texts, but I assumed they were probably just relieved not to have to pretend to care about their disappointing older daughter. I was wrong. Emma called me one day in July, laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Sarah, oh my God, you need to hear this. Your mom called me." "She what?" "Your mom called me. She somehow got my number and called me at work. She's looking for you." "What did you tell her?" Well, first I had to figure out who she was because she introduced herself as Sarah's mother, Patricia Mitchell. Like I should know who that is. Then she starts going on about how worried she is because you haven't been returning her calls or texts. I laughed. It took her 4 months to notice I wasn't responding. That's not even the best part. She asked if I knew where you were and I said I couldn't share that information without your permission. So then she asks if I could just confirm that you're safe and healthy, and I said yes. But then Sarah, then she asks if I think you're mad at them about something. She asked if I'm mad about something. Something like she can't possibly imagine what you could be upset about. I wanted so badly to ask her about your birthday and Jessica's house, but I figured you wouldn't want me to get involved. Good call. What did you tell her? I said that wasn't really my place to say, and if she wanted to know how you were feeling, she should probably ask you directly. Then she got all huffy and said she would if she could get in touch with you. Emma's call was just the beginning. Marcus called me 2 days later. My dad had somehow tracked down his LinkedIn profile and sent him a message asking about me. Marcus, being the good friend he is, responded with a professional but unhelpful message saying he wasn't comfortable sharing personal information about colleagues. Then Beth called. My mother had actually shown up at my old apartment building and knocked on doors until she found someone who knew me. Beth happened to be getting her mail when my mom cornered her in the lobby. She was so dramatic. "Sarah." She kept saying she was beside herself with worry and asking if I thought something terrible had happened to you. I told her you had moved and she asked where. When I said I couldn't tell her that, she literally grabbed my arm and said, "Please, I just need to know my daughter is okay." She grabbed your arm. Very gently, but yes. I felt bad for her for like half a second. And then I remembered all the stories you've told me about how they treat you versus Jessica. I just said I was sorry, but I couldn't help her. And I went upstairs. But Sarah, she stood in the lobby for another 20 minutes, asking other people if they knew you. The reports kept coming in, and each one was more absurd than the last. My old coworkers called to tell me my parents had shown up at my former office building. Apparently, my dad had worn a suit and tie and introduced himself to the receptionist as Mr. Mitchell, Sarah's father, like that would automatically grant him access to confidential employee information. When they told him I no longer worked there and they couldn't provide forwarding information, he'd asked to speak to my former supervisor. Poor Janet. My old boss called me herself to tell me about the encounter. "Sarah, your father sat in my office for 30 minutes asking about your state of mind before you left. He wanted to know if you'd seemed depressed or if anyone had been bothering you. I kept telling him that you'd left for a great opportunity and seemed excited about it, but he kept insisting that your disappearance was completely out of character. What did you tell him?" "The truth, that you were one of my most reliable employees and that you'd given proper notice and handled your transition professionally." But Sarah, he seemed genuinely convinced that something terrible had happened to you. He kept saying things like, "This isn't like Sarah and she would never just disappear without telling us where she was going." The irony wasn't lost on me. My father, who hadn't had a real conversation with me in years, was now claiming to be an expert on my character and behavior patterns. They'd also gone to my college alumni association asking for updated contact information. My friend Rachel, who worked there part-time, called to tell me about my mother's visit. Your mom showed up with a whole folder of documents. Rachel told me she had your diploma, old report cards, even some pictures from college. She kept showing them to me like she was trying to prove she was really your mother. It was actually kind of sad. Did she say why she needed to find me? She said there had been a family emergency and she desperately needed to reach you. When I told her I couldn't give out alumni information, she started crying. Like actual tears, Sarah. She said she was afraid something terrible had happened to her daughter. The family emergency angle was new. I wondered what crisis they'd invented to justify their search, or if my mother had simply decided that my absence itself constituted an emergency. My dad had even called the phone company trying to get my new number, but privacy laws prevented that. The customer service representative he'd spoken to had actually called my old number to report the incident, reaching the new owner, who was understandably confused and annoyed. But my parents' efforts weren't limited to official channels. They'd also enlisted Jessica's help in ways that were becoming increasingly invasive. Marcus told me that Jessica had started showing up at places I used to frequent in Ohio. She'd gone to my old gym, my favorite coffee shop, the bookstore where I used to spend Saturday afternoons. She'd shown my picture to employees and regular customers, asking if anyone had heard from me or knew where I'd gone. She came into the marketing agency where I used to work, Marcus said during one of our calls. She told the receptionist she was your sister and that there was a family emergency. She wanted to know if I'd mentioned anything about your plans or where you might be living now. What did they tell her? Nothing, thankfully. But Sarah, she seemed really distressed, like she was shaking when she was talking to the receptionist. Either she's a really good actress or she's genuinely upset about not being able to find you. I found myself wondering about Jessica's motivation. Was she worried about me, or was she just doing what our parents asked? Had it occurred to her that her brand new house might be connected to my disappearance? Did she feel guilty, or was she just confused about why I had suddenly vanished from their lives? The most ridiculous part came when I learned they'd started reaching out to people I barely knew. Beth told me that my mother had somehow gotten the contact information for other tenants in my old apartment building and had called them individually. She called Mrs. Henderson from 3B, Beth said, referring to the elderly woman who lived down the hall from my old apartment. Mrs. Henderson called me all confused, asking if I knew why some woman was calling her about you. Apparently, your mom asked her if she'd noticed any suspicious activity around your apartment before you moved out. Suspicious activity. I guess she wanted to know if you'd seemed scared or if there had been any strange people around. Mrs. Henderson told her you'd always been polite and quiet and that you'd said goodbye to her when you moved out. But your mom kept pressing, asking if she was sure you hadn't seemed worried or upset about anything. The paranoia was escalating. My parents had apparently convinced themselves that my disappearance was the result of some external threat rather than my own choice. In their minds, I couldn't possibly have decided to leave them voluntarily. Something bad must have happened to me. Emma called with updates about increasingly creative attempts to track me down. Your mom found my LinkedIn profile and sent me a message asking about your job search history. She wanted to know what companies you'd been interviewing with and whether you'd mentioned wanting to move to any specific cities. What did you tell her? I didn't respond to the LinkedIn message, but she found my work email address and sent me a much longer message. Sarah, it was intense. She wrote like 3 paragraphs about how worried she is and how this is tearing the family apart. She said, "Your dad hasn't been sleeping, and that Jessica cries every day because she misses you so much." That last part gave me pause. Jessica cries every day. The sister who posted gleefully about her new house without a single thought about how it might affect me was now crying daily about my absence. She also asked me to ask you to just send one text message. Emma continued, "Just one text to let them know you're alive and okay. She said they wouldn't ask for anything else if you could just confirm that you're safe." But I knew that wasn't true. One text would turn into a phone call. One phone call would turn into demands for an explanation. An explanation would turn into guilt trips and manipulation, and promises to do better that would last exactly until they felt comfortable going back to their old patterns. The most invasive thing they did, though, was hire that private investigator. But even before that, they'd apparently tried to conduct their own investigation. Marcus told me that my father had actually driven to Portland, a 20-hour drive from Ohio, and spent a weekend walking around downtown with printed photos of me, showing them to people on the street. How do you know that I asked? Because he posted about it on Facebook. He put up this long post about how he was searching for his missing daughter and asking if anyone in Portland had seen you. He included a bunch of photos and even offered a reward for information about your whereabouts. I immediately called Emma to have her check my father's Facebook page, since I blocked all of them and couldn't see it myself. "Oh my God, Sarah," she said after looking it up. This is a lot. He's posted like 15 times in the past month about looking for you, and the photos he's using, they're all old ones from like college and right after graduation. You look completely different now. What kind of posts? Let me read you one. "Still searching for my daughter Sarah. Last seen in Ohio in March. She may be suffering from depression or memory loss, If anyone has any information, please contact me immediately. We just want to know she's safe. Sarah, he's made it sound like you have some kind of medical condition. Memory loss. That's not even the worst one. There's another post where he says you disappeared without explanation and that your behavior before you left was erratic and concerning. He's basically told everyone that you had some kind of mental breakdown. I felt sick. My father was essentially conducting a public campaign that painted me as mentally unstable. Anyone who saw those posts would think I was a missing person with serious psychological problems, not a competent adult who had chosen to relocate and start fresh. Emma, can you screenshot those posts for me? I want to see exactly what he's saying. She sent me the screenshots, and they were even worse than I'd imagined. My father had crafted a narrative where I was a vulnerable person who had vanished under mysterious circumstances, possibly due to mental illness or external threats. He turned my conscious choice into a tragic mystery that required community intervention to solve. The post said dozens of comments from people offering prayers, sharing similar stories, and giving advice about search strategies. A few people had even claimed to have seen me in various cities across the country, leading to a string of false leads that my father had apparently followed up on. One commenter had written, "Have you checked hospitals and shelters? Sometimes people with mental health crises end up in places where they can't identify themselves." Another had suggested, "You should contact that show about missing persons. They might be able to help get the word out." My father had responded to every comment with gratitude and updates about his search efforts. He created an entire online community of strangers who were now invested in finding his missing daughter. But the most disturbing part was a post from 2 weeks ago. "We've hired a professional investigator to help find Sarah. If you have any information, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're offering a $25,000 reward for credible information leading to her location. We love you, Sarah, and we just want you to come home." A $25,000 reward. They were treating me like a kidnapping victim. I realized then that this had gone way beyond simple concern or even guilt about forgetting my birthday. My parents had created an entire fantasy where I was a victim who needed to be rescued rather than facing the possibility that I'd left because of how they treated me. It was easier for them to believe that something terrible had happened to me than to examine their own behavior and acknowledged that they'd failed as parents. The private investigator they'd hired was apparently quite thorough. Beth told me he'd interviewed not just her, but several other people in my old neighborhood. He'd asked about my daily routines, my social circle, my mental state, and whether I'd ever mentioned feeling threatened or unsafe. He was very professional, Beth said, but also very persistent. He asked me the same questions 3 different ways, like he was trying to catch me in a lie or get me to reveal something I hadn't intended to share. What kinds of questions he wanted to know if you'd ever talked about wanting to disappear or start over somewhere else. When I said you'd mentioned wanting a change of scenery, he asked if that seemed like a normal career move or if it seemed desperate or impulsive. He also asked if I'd ever seen you arguing with anyone or if you'd seemed paranoid or fearful in the weeks before you moved. The investigator had also apparently done research into my digital footprint before I'd completely severed my online presence. He'd somehow managed to get screenshots from mutual friends and people I'd interacted with on social media before I blocked my family and deactivated my accounts. He showed me some of your old Instagram posts that he'd gotten from someone else. Emma told me during one of our calls. He wanted to know if I thought the captions seemed normal or if they indicated depression or distress. I told him you'd always been pretty private on social media and that nothing seemed unusual to me. Which post was he looking at random stuff from the past year? That picture of you hiking at the state park? The one of you at Marcus's birthday party? Some food photos? He was reading way too much into everything. Like he asked me if I thought it was significant that you posted a picture of a sunset with a caption endings and beginnings 2 months before you moved. That was just a random sunset photo. I know that and I told him that, but he wrote it down in his little notebook like it was some kind of crucial evidence. The investigator had also contacted my former therapist's office, though privacy laws prevented them from sharing any information. My old dentist's office had gotten a call asking about my last appointment and whether I'd seemed distressed or mentioned any concerns about my safety. It was starting to feel like my entire life in Ohio was being dissected and analyzed by strangers who were looking for evidence of some crisis that didn't exist. My parents had turned my personal decision into a criminal investigation, and they were dragging everyone I'd ever known into their delusion. But perhaps the most ridiculous part of their search efforts was what Jessica was doing on social media. Emma discovered that Jessica had created multiple fake accounts on Instagram, Facebook, and even TikTok, all designed to try to find me or people who might know me. She's been friending people from your college, your old job, even random people who have your same name, Emma told me. One of the fake accounts is pretending to be a travel blogger who's visiting different cities and asking locals for recommendations. I think she's hoping you respond if you think it's just some random person asking about Portland. How did you figure out it was her? The account used a stock photo, but when I reverse searched the image, I found the same photo on a real estate blog post that Jessica had written for work. Plus, the writing style was exactly like hers, lots of exclamation points and emoji. Jessica had also apparently joined Facebook groups for people who lived in various cities where she thought I might have moved. She posted in groups for Seattle, Denver, Austin, and Portland, always with some variation of the same message. Hi everyone. I'm trying to reconnect with an old college friend named Sarah Mitchell. She's about 28, works in marketing, and might have moved to your city recently. If anyone knows her or has any leads, I'd be so grateful for your help. The posts always got responses from helpful group members offering advice or sharing similar stories. But of course, no one had any useful information because Jessica was looking in the wrong places and using outdated details about my life. But the fake social media accounts served another purpose. They allowed Jessica to monitor my old accounts and see if I was still active anywhere. She'd apparently figured out that I'd blocked the family, so she was using the fake accounts to try to see my profiles and posts. It was a level of digital stalking that was both impressive and deeply disturbing. My sister, who barely seemed to notice my existence when we lived in the same state, was now spending hours every day trying to track me down online. The whole situation had taken on a life of its own. My parents had convinced themselves, their extended family, their friends, and even strangers on the internet, that I was a missing person in need of rescue. They created this elaborate narrative where I was the victim of some unknown crisis, and they were the worried parents doing everything they could to bring their daughter home safely. What they couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge was that I wasn't missing. I was exactly where I chose to be, living exactly the life I wanted to live. I wasn't in danger. I wasn't having a breakdown. And I didn't need to be rescued. I was just done with them. In November, I got a call from Emma that made me question my entire family's sanity. Sarah, I need you to sit down for this one. I'm already sitting. What now? Your parents hired a private investigator. They what? A private investigator contacted me yesterday. Professional guy, very polite, said he was trying to locate you on behalf of your concerned family. He had business cards and everything. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I was. I told him the same thing I told your parents. I can confirm you're safe and healthy, but I'm not sharing your location without your permission. He said he understood and left me his card in case I changed my mind. This is insane. It gets worse. I called Marcus and the guy contacted him too. Same story. But Sarah, he also went to your old apartment building and interviewed your former neighbors. Beth said he was very respectful but thorough. He asked about your habits, your friends, whether you seemed distressed before you moved. I couldn't believe it. They hired an actual private investigator to track me down. The same parents who couldn't remember my birthday were now spending hundreds of dollars on a professional to find me. Did he find anything useful? I asked, morbidly curious. I don't think so. We all gave him the same story. You're fine. You moved voluntarily and were not sharing details. He seemed satisfied that you weren't in danger or anything. The private investigator thing should have been the end of it, but my family apparently has no concept of boundaries or limits. In December, Jessica started trying to find me through my hobbies. She somehow figured out I'd been taking pottery classes back in Ohio and started calling pottery studios in major cities, asking if they had a student named Sarah Mitchell. When that didn't work, she tried yoga studios, book clubs, hiking groups, anything she could think of that I might have joined. Marcus told me she'd even created fake social media accounts to try to find me. She'd sent friend requests to people with similar names or from my college, hoping to find someone who might know where I was. Your sister is persistent, he said. I have to give her that. She's desperate to find me so they can go back to ignoring me with a clear conscience, I replied. But I was starting to wonder if that was really what this was about. The amount of time, energy, and money they were putting into finding me seemed excessive for people who just wanted to assuage their guilt. The answer came in January, almost a year after I disappeared from their lives. I was having coffee with a new friend from work when my phone rang. Unknown number, Oregon area code. I'd been ignoring unknown calls for months, but something made me answer this one. Hello, is this Sarah Mitchell? The voice was unfamiliar. Professional female. Who is asking? My name is Linda Rodriguez, and I'm a social worker with the Oregon Department of Human Services. I received a wellness check request for you, and I wanted to reach out to confirm that you're safe and not in any danger. My blood ran cold. A wellness check request from who I can't share specific details about who requested it, but I can tell you that someone expressed concern that you might be missing or in danger. They provided your name and indicated you might be living in the Portland area. I'm not missing or in danger. I moved here voluntarily for work. That's what I assumed, but I do need to follow up on these requests. Would you be willing to meet with me briefly just so I can close this case? I agreed to meet her the next day at a coffee shop downtown. Linda turned out to be a kind woman in her 50s who seemed as annoyed by the situation as I was. I have to ask, she said after confirming my identity and well-being. Do you have any idea why someone might think you were missing or in danger? I gave her the abbreviated version of the story. Family issues. Decided to move and start fresh. They've been trying to track me down ever since. And they filed a missing person report. Is that what this is? Not exactly. In Oregon, adults have the right to disappear if they want to. But when someone files a concern report claiming they believe a person might be in danger, we do have to follow up. Whoever filed this report claimed they had reason to believe you might be the victim of foul play or suffering from a mental health crisis. Foul play? They apparently told the police in your hometown that your disappearance was completely out of character and that you'd been acting strangely before you vanished. The local police passed the information along to us as a courtesy. I was speechless. They convinced the police that I might have been murdered or kidnapped. I can see from your reaction that this wasn't the case. Linda continued. Do you want to contact your family and let them know you're okay? I can facilitate that conversation if it would help. No, I said firmly. I'm an adult who made an adult decision to relocate and start over. I don't owe them a conversation. That's absolutely your right. I'll close this case and note that you're safe and living independently by choice. I should mention, though, that whoever filed this report was very convincing. They provided a lot of details about your life, your job history, your friends. They clearly know you well. They think they know me well. There's a difference. Linda nodded. I see this more often than you'd think. Families who don't understand that sometimes people just want a fresh start. After Linda left, I sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours processing what had just happened. My parents had convinced the police that I might be dead. They'd gotten a social worker involved. They turned my conscious choice to start over into a potential criminal investigation. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. For the first time in my life, I had their full attention. Growing up, I would have done anything to get my parents to worry about me the way they worried about Jessica. I would have loved for them to move heaven and earth to find me when I was struggling. I would have been thrilled to know they cared enough to hire professionals and involve authorities. The irony was devastating. Now that I finally had the love and attention I'd always wanted from them, I no longer needed it. That night, I called Emma. They filed a missing person report. I told her, "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. A social worker contacted me today. They told the police I might have been murdered." Jesus. Sarah, that's actually kind of scary. Like, what if they try to have you committed or something? They can't. I'm clearly competent and living independently. But Emma, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to call my mom and tell her I'm alive and safe, but that I've chosen to relocate, and I don't want any contact with the family. Don't tell her where I am. Don't give her my number. Just tell her to stop looking for me because I'm fine and I made this choice deliberately. Are you sure you could call her yourself and really let her have it about the birthday thing and Jessica's house and everything? I thought about it, but you know what? I don't think she'd get it. She'd just make excuses and try to guilt me into coming back so they can go back to treating me like I'm invisible. This way, at least I know they'll remember I exist. Emma called my mom the next day and delivered the message. According to her, my mom cried and begged for my phone number, but Emma held firm. She did ask one question, though. "Mrs. Mitchell asked me to ask you something." Emma told me later. She wants to know what they did wrong. She says they've been going over everything trying to figure out why you left and they just don't understand. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Tell her to think about the difference between how they treated me and how they treated Jessica. Tell her to think about my 28th birthday and Jessica's brand new house. If she can't figure it out from there, then she's even more clueless than I thought. Emma delivered that message too. She said my mom was quiet for a long time and then said she needed to go. That was 8 months ago. I haven't heard from any of them since. I'd like to say I never think about them, but that wouldn't be true. I wonder sometimes if they finally understood what Emma told them. I wonder if they talk about me at family dinners or if they've just written me off as their crazy daughter who disappeared for no reason. I wonder if Jessica feels guilty about the house, or if she even connects it to my disappearance. I wonder if my parents have learned anything from this experience, or if they'll just make the same mistakes with their future grandchildren. But mostly I don't wonder. Mostly I'm happy. I got promoted at work last month. Jake and I are talking about moving in together. I've made real friends here. People who value me for who I am rather than putting up with me out of obligation. I'm planning a trip to Thailand with my hiking group, and I'm learning to speak Spanish just because I want to. My life is full and rich and entirely my own. I built something beautiful from nothing, and I did it without their help or approval or attention. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if they just sent me a birthday text. Would I still be in Ohio, working a job I didn't love, spending holidays feeling like an outsider in my own family? Would I have ever found the courage to bet on myself? I'll never know. And honestly, I don't need to. The path that brought me here was painful, but it led me to exactly where I'm supposed to be. To anyone reading this who feels invisible in their own family, who's tired of begging for scraps of love and attention, who's wondering if they're asking for too much, you're not. You deserve better. You deserve people who remember your birthday without being reminded, who celebrate your successes instead of taking them for granted, who notice when you're gone. And if your family can't give you that, you can build a new one. It might be scary. It might be lonely at first, but I promise you this. The people who are meant to be in your life will love you without you having to earn it. They'll show up without being asked. They'll remember what matters to you because you matter to them. As for my parents, I hope they learned something from all this. I hope they're better to Jessica than they were to me. Though honestly, that wouldn't be hard. I hope they understand now that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day through your actions. But their journey isn't my responsibility anymore. I chose myself, and it was the best decision I ever made. The funny thing is, in trying so desperately to find me, they accidentally gave me the greatest gift they could have given me. They proved that I was strong enough to disappear from their lives and build something better on my own. And for that, I'm actually grateful.